Unless you've really been off the grid this summer, you have no doubt encountered the warnings about a possible recession or economic slowdown. But is it just that, speculation, or is there something really to be worried about? Here to help us figure all that out, Dawn Desjardins, Deputy Chief Economist, RBC. Mike Moffat, Assistant Professor in the Business, Economics and Public Policy Group at the Ivey Business School. Linda Nazareth, Principal of Relentless Economics and Senior Fellow for Economics and Population Change at the Macdonald-Laurier Institute. And Jason Kirby, freelance business journalist, whose work you have seen in Maclean's and the Globe and Mail and other publications as well. And it's great to have everybody here at the first week of our 14th season here on the agenda. I want to start with you because yesterday, Dawn, the Bank of Canada maintained the overnight interest rate at 1.75%. Historically speaking, a very low rate. But given that the U.S. lowered its overnight rate for the first time since 2008, earlier this summer, I'm wondering what your view is on the advisability of our bank doing what it did.
Well, we've come off a period of pretty strong growth, especially in the second quarter. In fact, if we average the first couple of quarters, our economy grew at over 2% rate. So I think for the bank, they're looking at growth and they're looking at inflation, the core measures right around their 2% target. And I don't think they're feeling an urgent need at this stage to change monetary policy, as they say it remains appropriate. I think there are some risks to the outlook, and I think the bank did point to those global risks in their statement, but I don't think it's enough for get them off the sidelines right now.
And we will get into those risks as we continue our conversation. How did you read it?
As John did, they do have a justification to cut rates, Steve, if they believe that what's happening outside our borders is going to hit us very quickly. If they don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, there's time to wait. And let's remember, there's a lot of moving pieces here. We're not just Vancouver, or Toronto, or Calgary. We're all of those things, and you have to have a policy appropriate for everyone. And right now, cutting rates may not be that policy.
Okay. Mike, we need a good professor here, and thankfully we have one, and you're going to take us through a couple of charts that we're going to look at here on bond yields. Why don't you first of all tell us what that means and then the significance of what we're about to see?
Well, bond yield is essentially an interest rate. So the interest rate on a government bond. Normally speaking, that the longer you loan a government money for, the higher interest rate that you get, because there's a chance inflation might go up in the future. There's a chance that the government might just not pay you back for whatever reason. So if I'm going to loan a government more money or money over a longer term, I'm going to need a higher interest rate to cover that. So normally our yield curve is upward sloping. That the longer you
Sheldon, bring that up. This is what normally things look like in the course of regular business, right?
So if I'm loaning a government money for 2 months, I'm pretty confident they're going to pay me back. Interest rates are low. I'm pretty sure that you're not going to have a surge of inflation. 30 years from now, you don't know what's going to happen. You might get 1970s style inflation. You might get a case like we've seen in Latin American countries where the country just goes insolvent and can't pay you back. So normally speaking, interest rates are higher if you're loaning the government money for 25, 30 years or so on. So
what's happened over the summer that have got people confused?
Well, what's gotten people confused is that it's pointing the other way, that actually if you're loaning government money for a longer period of time, you're actually getting lower interest rates. And this is a very concerning sign because it means that markets are expecting lower interest rates to go down in the future. And why are interest rates going to go down in the future? Well, it's a sign that recession may be coming.
How did you read that?
Well, that's exactly the view, and people are. The inverted yield curve is getting a lot of attention right now, and people are, hearing about it on the news and wondering what is this thing. It's a very kind of complex indicator, but it's a thing that economists are watching closely, and I think people are starting to. I love going to Google Trends, which is a way of searching what people are it's kind of like the id of society. And you get here's what people are really looking at. And people are now searching for the term recession at the highest level that they were, in 2008. It's on people's minds, and it's partly because of this, because an inverted yield curve historically has preceded recessions. That's, going back, I don't know how far you could go back, probably, 50, 60 years. And before every recession, you've had this this take place.
So you can therefore now tell us
But
exactly
you can't
when
say,
it's going to happen.
You can't say that because there's, this time is different is the most
Yes.
dangerous line.
And as well, it's predicted 8 out of the last 5
That's the
recessions.
thing.
Right.
So,
Right.
so
Yes.
there are sort of false positives here.
And at what point do you figure out whether this is a false positive or an actual indication of recession?
Usually the amount that it's inverted, and I think that's what people are concerned with. That if it's just kind of slightly inverted, that's a sign. Well, maybe this time is different, as Jason says. But what we saw again going back to about May or so, just the level of inversion suggests that markets are quite concerned about what's going on with the trade wars, Brexit, and all of these sort of international issues. They're really signaling there's the level of inversion suggests that there is a high probability of a recession.
Have you made a determination for the bank as to whether or not this is a false positive or the real thing?
Well, we don't give, I would say, about a 30% chance of recession over the next 12 months. We don't think it's a lot higher than that. Certainly when you look at other indicators. So we look at the inversion of the yield curve as one. You look at certain parts of the economy. Are they suffering? Well, manufacturing right now arguably is coming under some pressure. Our exporters, because we do send our goods into the U.S. industrial sector. But then you look at the other side of the equation, and the benefits from these very low interest rates is that the Canadian consumer is in pretty good shape. Our labor markets are very healthy, and the rise in debt service costs that we were fretting about doesn't look like it's going to be so onerous. So you've got to weigh those two sides, I would say.
Linda, I have heard people say you can actually talk yourself into a recession if you keep predicting there's going to be a recession because people lose confidence and they get nervous and they change their spending habits and so on. Is that true?
Well, it is and it isn't. People, if they get scared they're going to lose their job, of course they're going to spend less. They're not going to take that holiday. They're not going to do the renovation. They're going to be careful, and that goes through the economy, and it's not the greatest thing. I'm more concerned about businesses and how they're acting, particularly in the U.S. If we'd seen decent spend on business investment the last couple of years, we might not even have been in this position. We would see that engine going. And what has happened is, despite the Trump tax cut, you didn't really see businesses step up the way you might have expected them to.
What do they do with all that money?
Goes to dividends, some of it. Some of it is being held by them. And, some of it perhaps will be spent the next little while. But I like to think there is a cushion there, that companies are not necessarily on the brink. But for now, the numbers have been pretty disappointing. I also would like to see a lot more business spending because I think technology is perhaps going to be a savior here, that if companies are well-positioned and efficient and doing things well, they may not have to resort to major layoffs, and this may go through more smoothly than other, recessions have done.
Jason, let me revisit that question. Do you think we can talk ourselves into a recession?
I think that if you go back over the time period, the last decade or so since the last recession, there have been several times where this question has come up, where you had the Euro crisis, you had the potential of whole countries in Europe, the so-called pigs, Portugal, Italy, Greece, this panic
Spain.
that was Spain, this panic that was consuming global markets, and I went back and I looked, and people were asking that exact same question then. Oh, we're going to talk ourselves into a recession, that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but we didn't. And there's been a couple of those moments where it certainly, I know I've written a couple of, I might have written a couple of recession looming stories along the way there, and where it seemed like, we were about to head into one. So I don't think that you can really, as consumers, talk yourself into that. But I do think that, as Linda said, it comes down to the confidence that businesses have and whether they have, ultimately the real concern is whether lenders start to panic as well and whether they start to pull back. And that's when you start to get into, lower credits and kind of the credit crunch scenario. And, that's the extreme, the kind of situation that sent us into the Great Recession last time was that credit crunch. Ultimately, you want lenders to keep lending. And I don't see any, on the consumer side, my mailbox is full these days of, credit card offers. And I know this is the same for a lot of people. It's kind of hard to keep up. Like lenders are just doing everything they can to
They
try
just
and...
think you're a great rescue.
Yeah. Well, it's not just me. I know that this is like, I've taken a look out there, and people are being inundated with, credit card offers on that right now. And please buy a house is the other.
Let me just tweak that question a bit for you, Mike. Can we talk ourselves into a recession that otherwise would not have happened, but because of all of the lack of confidence demonstrated by 24/7 discussion of it on news channels and so on, we've brought it about?
I think we can, particularly again on the business investment side, because we have to remember that someone's spending is somebody else's income. So if I'm not out there building a new factory, building equipment, those are factory workers who are not getting hired and so on. So absolutely, there's a self-fulfilling prophecy in this. But we also have to remember, at some point, a recession is going to happen. So the question is, will a recession happen? Well, 100% yes. All we're sort of arguing here is what is the timing of that? We've had a couple dozen over the last 200 years, and over the next 200 years, we'll probably have a couple dozen more.
Well, one of the reasons besides the reasons you've all given so far here tonight, one of the reasons, Don, we're talking so much about this is because of the trade war, the tariff war between China and the United States right now. Mm-hmm. And it has been demonstrated that Donald Trump's tariff war with China has, as a result, lowered economic growth figures and made people a whole lot more skittish and nervous about things. Mm-hmm. Where do things sit in that tariff war right now?
Well, it still seems to be moving forward, let's put it that way. And so certainly I think we're seeing on the sentiment indicators that we're talking about, especially in the US, where we are seeing manufacturers saying, hey, we are worried, and we're starting to see signs that perhaps contraction in economic activity in that sector is in the offing. So that war is continuing. We're not seeing a lot of temperance in terms of their language. We did see the
so
latest
surprising
round.
from the president.
Isn't it? Just, and we did see that latest round of tariffs being put into place as of September the 1st. And you are reading a lot about it. I read about a company in Colorado that makes shoes, and they're saying, okay, now we're a pretty small company, and we are trying to get our shoes in from China, but because everyone's rushing to do it, we can't get our order filled, first of all. And, we're going to face these increased costs. How is that really going to work for us? But we can't also afford to move our manufacturing back into the United States. So I think it is damaging when you read stories like that for companies at large in the United States. And some of these smaller ones really just can't afford to bring it back.
It's not just a tariff war, though, Linda. The president also tweeted that he believed that American businesses in China ought to close shop and come home. He said that.
He did.
Now, how constructive is that?
It's not constructive. I think he did have to backtrack on that a little bit because it would be very hard to make that happen. But, just to come back to the idea of trade, if you only remember one thing from your economics in university, it's that trade is good, right? That in destroying trade will usually destroy an economy. That's historically something that's been true. So I think it's a little bit tragic that this is happening. To pick up what Mike said earlier, that recessions are inevitable, I'm going to quote Ben Bernanke, former head of the U.S. Federal Reserve. He said, look, business cycles don't die, they are murdered. And this one is being murdered by trade. Right.
That's a great line.
Yes.
That's Bernanke's line, eh?
Yes.
That's a great line. How much worse did the president's comment about if you're doing business in China, you're a trader, bring your business home, I demand that you bring your business home to the United States, how much did that exacerbate the situation?
Well, it certainly didn't help, though. What are we on about? The 2,000th crazy tweets from the president. So I think right now we're all sort of immune to it. But yeah, it's not the thing you expect from a democratic country, to sort of ordering business people to, move your production. And I think what the president needs to realize is there are a lot of other countries out there. So if China becomes too expensive because of tariffs, they're not necessarily going to move back to the United States, and we're seeing this. So Google just announced a couple of weeks ago that they're producing their new smartphone in Vietnam. We have the Indian government under Modi. They've identified 9 different sectors, telecommunications, pharmaceuticals, and so on. Said, we're going to try and get Apple to our country. We're going to try and get these other companies to our country. So I think that's what we might see as these supply chains change, that they might leave China, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to go to the United States. They're going to places like Vietnam, Philippines, India, Indonesia, and so on.
Jason, I have to tell you a little story as I set up this next question, which is over the summer, I was on the dock of the marina in Kagawong, Ontario, population about 100, maybe 105 when my family shows up. And there were some visitors from Michigan there, husband, wife, and 20-something daughter. And I asked them about the president and about the trade war with China and the tariffs and so on. And I kept it very neutral and open-ended, the question. I said, what do you like about what Donald Trump's doing so far? And the first thing the husband said was, sticking it to China.
Yeah.
He's a small business person in Michigan. I said, but you know that hurts your bottom line. He says, I know, but we got to do it. How much of that thinking either contributes or doesn't to the predicament the U.S. finds itself in right now?
Well, I mean, that's Trump's base, and you know, he's appealing to that strongly, and it definitely is it's a widely held sentiment. It's interesting though when you have all the rhetoric around the China-U.S. trade war and all these tweets and just the angry language. I mean, we've in Canada here heard all this before. We went through this. We were like the rough draft of the China-U.S. trade war. What's interesting from that was that at the end of the day, despite all the upheaval and the chaos that came out of it, we ended up with a trade deal that is still yet to be ratified that was not all that different from the situation that we had before.
Oh, that's not true.
NAFTA.
No, the president said before it was a
Oh, yeah,
disaster.
no, exactly.
But now it's the greatest ever.
Exactly. Well,
So
that's
you're
what
wrong. I'm sorry, Jason, you're wrong about that. Yeah.
No, well, that's the point. Trump will whatever he gets out of China. I mean, it might be that there's some incremental opening of access on patents and technology companies being able to move in there, or whatever he might get. He will turn around and claim that it was a massive victory. He's fixed the longstanding problems that the U.S. might have had with China, and for 40 to 50% of the American population, that his word is gold, and they will take him on that. But the rest of the world, may want to take a look at what Canada did go through and how, at the end of the day, there were changes, and I know milk farmers will definitely say that there were big changes. Sure. But even there, it wasn't nearly as big as Trump was talking like. So maybe the optimist in me says maybe we come out of this with again a lot of rhetoric, but not a lot of change, and trade continues, and Trump still gets to go off and claim that he had this massive victory. And
how much, Mike, in your view, did the USMCA, or as I've heard somebody refer to it as USMCA, how much was that a template for whatever future trade arrangements the United States is likely to make with others?
I think it was, and I would agree with Jason that it sort of signaled that they're willing to make a lot of noise, a lot of hard demands, but at the end of the day, this is going to look a lot like the previous deals. Though that said, we still don't have this ratified. We're kind of in this situation where we're not sure what's going to happen in the next couple of years. That Democrats and Republicans have to work together to ratify this, and that's hard because it involves Democrats and Republicans working together. So, yeah, it's hard to see. I don't really see a pathway out to have the United States force China to make a lot of changes, simply because the Americans don't have a lot of allies on their side right now. I mean, they did have a pathway. They have some very legitimate concerns about China when it comes to intellectual property. And what they could have done is work with their TPP partners to try and leverage China, but they're trying to go about this solo. That's Trump's style. And I don't see a path to victory for them here. Again, other than maybe some symbolic victories that Trump can wave around in 2020.
Dawn, the lack of ratification for USMCA right now, how much does that uncertainty affect the Canadian economy, in your view?
Well, I don't know. I mean, we're going back to our, status quo. And so for us, that is good, reasonably good. We've lived with it for many years, and we've benefited from that. So I don't see that as riling up or creating a lot of uncertainty for Canadian businesses. I think it's more, how do we see demand evolving? And I think for businesses, it's more that, like, where am I going to sell my stuff, even if it's still in a friendly relationship with the United States. If the United States demand is weakening, it doesn't really make all that much difference.
Do you think there's a lack of confidence or a a greater uncertainty as a result of the lack of ratification for USMCA so far?
I agree with Don. It's not the major factor here. If you're asking, is this going to contribute to recession? I don't think it is. I think this is coming from outside of Canada. It's coming from the U.S. It's coming from China. And the Chinese economy is weakening quite a bit too. If you look at the economic signals there, if you look at commodity prices, they're weakening. If you look at Europe, the German numbers are quite concerning right now. So it's not really a Canadian issue. Canada can survive, I think, as long as the international environment is okay. But what's happening is the international environment is crumbling around us. And that's what the Bank of Canada is trying to judge. How quickly is this happening?
In which case, how's our economy, generally speaking, doing right now, notwithstanding all of the other things that were just mentioned?
Well, that's kind of the funny thing that, things seem to be going pretty well. As we discussed earlier, GDP numbers are strong. We've had some of the best job growth in the first half of 2019 that we've seen in a decade. But those all tend to be what we call lagging indicators. Those kind of are the last things to change. So that does make it a little bit ironic that, we're looking out 12 to 18 months from now and saying, oh, okay, there's all these black clouds out there. There might be a recession. But the here and now is actually pretty good.
How about in the province of Ontario, Jason? The Ford government obviously would like to make a claim that the economy is doing well here and they get the credit for it.
Right.
Are they entitled to it?
I don't think that the Ontario economy is doing any better or worse than it was under the Liberal government. But again, going back to the Trump tactic, you claim what you want, and your supporters will go along with it.
But what do the empirically provable facts tell us?
I mean that there is a slowdown in manufacturing, but there's been a slowdown in manufacturing for a long time, where it's going through a big adjustment. Employment growth is still humming along very nicely. Wage growth is going along really nicely, and so like Mike said, these are all lagging indicators. A recession can be underway before you start to see wages and employment take a hit. That's what happened 2007, 2008. Employment kept. It took a while for that to start to actually hit. But right now, if you just take a look at empirically the numbers, Ontario is doing quite well.
Let me try a double-barreled hypothetical question here, which no good politician is ever supposed to answer, but maybe an economist can.
Whoa.
which is, how concerned are you about the size of the Ontario deficit, regardless of what it is, because there's dispute about what it is? Is it big enough to make you worried that if we do go into a recession, we don't have a lot of wiggle room for government to prime the pump to protect people from whatever ravages come after that?
Well, I mean, I don't think there's any limit in the sense of it's a hard and fast rule. You could face higher funding costs because international investors could say, well, I need a little bit more if I'm going to lend money to that government because their credit isn't looking quite as sparkling as I'd like to see it. But I do think that, if governments have to, that's their role, to stabilize the economy. So if we do hit a recession, there is a risk that we will face these higher funding costs, but I don't think that the government wouldn't do that if they needed to, if pressed.
Can I get you on that, Linda?
And that's what governments do every time, in this country, in other countries, in this province and other provinces. If things look like they're going to weaken, you will see kind of the goodies we had 10 years ago. Remember, there was a lot of arenas built, a lot of roads paved, a lot of incentives to businesses or to consumers to go out and do things, and I think we will see that again. And yes, the deficit will go higher, and at some point there will be higher taxes. If you're asking me, is this great long term? It isn't. I tend to worry a lot about the demographics and how the long term will weigh on people, but in terms of the short term, I'm sure the pumps will be primed again.
Well, here's the concern. We're cruising in around $340 billion worth of debt in the province of Ontario, and that money presumably has to be paid back someday. And if we're going to go on a massive spending spree over the next few years in the event that we have to protect people from a recession, what does that do to the balance sheet?
Well, I'm less concerned about this because interest rates are so low and don't look like they're going up anytime soon, though you do have to worry about black swan type events. Right now, on a per capita basis, in real inflation-adjusted terms, the provincial government is spending about $100 less a person in interest costs than they did under Bill Davis.
Which is, just for those who don't know, this is 70s and early 80s.
80s, exactly. And that's so while the deficit has increased, The population has increased, we've had inflation, and also we've had much lower interest rates. So I think we can weather this. I do worry about demographics. As the baby boomers get older, our healthcare costs are going to rise substantially. But I think overall, it's we have other issues, and we look around the world, at the UK, the US, and all these other jurisdictions. Our deficits and debts look absolutely tiny compared to what, say, the Trump administration is doing.
They do, and again, these are all politicians who are making these comments, so take it for what it's worth. We were told by the progressive conservatives when they were campaigning for office a little over a year ago that look less at the number of the actual deficit, look more at the percentage of the gross domestic product that it represents, and that the Liberals had that number up around 40% and going nervously higher, and in their view, it ought to be coming down below 40%. Well, we're not coming down below 40% right now, so should we still be nervous about all this?
Again, I don't think so. Again, because interest rates are so low. Again, you don't want to necessarily. You do have to worry that they might spike up. There's always a potential for black swan events, but I don't see it as problematic. If there's wasteful spending, then obviously we should get rid of that wasteful spending. But interest rates are low. They look like they're going to continue to be low or go down even further. So in my mind, if bond interest rates are only like 1% a year, what are you worried about? Because again, the per capita real expenditure on interest is much lower than it was back in the 1980s.
Chase, admittedly, we're not at 100%. We're not at 200% as debt as a proportion of the economy. But we're at 40%. And people have said in the past, you don't want to be higher than 40% if you want your books to be in good shape. Does that give you pause? Are you nervous about that?
I guess I'm with everyone
You're with
here
Mike
on that
Batten.
as well. I'm not
trying to stir up trouble where it doesn't
exactly,
exist.
exactly.
All right.
But it also, Trump has kind of come along and made the job of, with the deficits that the Trump administration
Trillion dollar
deficits.
Trillion.
It really just puts everything in Canada in this real perspective, and that our situation is not nearly as bad. And it also makes it a little bit harder for those who are kind of the deficit hawks out there, because the U.S. was always like, well, we got to get our house in order. The U.S. was always kind of held up as even though their deficits have always been massive, there was still this idea that we had to bring things down to be more in line with them. So that kind of argument goes away when you're talking about trillion-dollar deficits and no sign of that changing course at all.
No plan to balance.
Not in the States.
Not anytime soon. What about, can I bring personal debt levels into this? Because that's the one thing we hear frequently in the media is that people are carrying too much debt on their credit cards, their houses, their cars, whatever. You look at the numbers. Does it concern you?
Well, it is certainly, if we hit a recession, it will be very problematic, I think. The thing we were looking at debt service costs, and our concern for the future was that as interest rates were going to move higher, which they temporarily did, we were going to see a bigger bite in terms of incomes that you had to use every month to pay your debt to service it. But now, with interest rates having moved back down, with our incomes growing, that ratio actually is starting to move down. So is it concerning? Well, to some degree, if we hit a weak patch, yeah, it's going to be problematic. But I think at this stage, it is definitely manageable, and it shouldn't impede the Canadian consumer from continuing to spend, not lavishly, but continuing to spend as we go and drive the economy higher.
How do you read it, Linda?
I would agree. Let's remember, we were supposed to be talking about higher interest rates right now. And if you are somebody who has a job and is doing relatively well, you're getting a break. You were supposed to be coping with it costing more to borrow, costing more to service your debt, and you are not dealing with that. So this is an opportunity, right?
Unless your credit card debt is through the roof, which what are the interest rates you're paying on that?
But they would have been even
19,
higher.
20, 21?
They would have been 22 or 23, right?
Okay.
So we didn't go that route. So the Bank of Canada may not be cutting rates, but they had planned, or we thought they had planned, to be raising rates right now. And we are being shielded from that.
Okay. In our remaining moments here, I know none of you is in politics technically. You have to skirt around the edges of it. But we're about to go into a federal election campaign, and I do want to get some sense at the table here as to, you've all said tonight that Canada's economy, relatively speaking, as you look around the world, is in pretty good shape. And I want to know, in your view, how much credit does the Trudeau government get for the state of our economy?
Not nearly as much as it takes credit for the state of the economy. Governments really, politicians love to present themselves as having these levers that they can control, get in and guide growth and guide the economy the way they'd like. And the reality is that economies are so complex, and especially with floating exchange rates, that any actions that governments take tend to be outweighed by other factors. And so, no, I don't think that they will campaign. Trudeau will be campaigning hard, and they already are. Every time you see them in any of their tweets, it's all about how our policies created this situation. But really, the economy is not doing all that different, performing all that differently than it was under Harper. He had to deal with like the oil crash and all of that, and like the panic in 2014, 2015 that there might be a kind of a recession that timed with the last election. But really, things are not all that different than then. So the reality is politicians don't have that much control over economies, but they will tell voters that they do.
Mike, what's your view on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So policy matters, but it matters more in a long run sense. So, you build some infrastructure, that infrastructure gets used for decades and boosts the economy for decades. Education policy, you teach a 4-year-old how to read, and that's a skill that they're gonna have for the next 80 to 90 years. So, they matter in a long run sense, and they matter, whether or not the economy grows at 2.1 or 2.2%. We might not notice so much this year, but compounded over 80 years, that makes a massive difference. So they matter in a long run sense, but I agree with Jason. In the short run, it's anything they do tends to be outweighed by central banks, by global conditions, and a variety of factors.
In the last federal election campaign, the Liberals promised to run, I think, what they called modest deficits, about $10 billion a year, which would, spark a little bit, some economic growth and activity. We now know that those numbers have been about 3 times higher than what they originally promised, maybe even more than 3 times higher. How worried does Bay Street get about that?
Well, I think it is worrying if you're going to continue to do that, mainly because, it's true. Interest rates are low, debt service costs are not growing exponentially. However, is that really the most effective way to use taxpayers' money? Should we be funneling that into more infrastructure, or either more productive, as Mike says? We want policy that's going to be setting us up for the future and continuing to ensure our productivity. So that is a challenge. So yeah, I think it is concerning. You do want to, at some day, think about how you're going to get, especially your debt levels, to start to move the opposite direction.
Those deficits being 300 to 350% higher than what were planned, you get concerned about that?
I don't think it's ideal, but I don't think that that's necessarily the worst thing for the economy. Now, I would like to see lots of policies being emphasized that aren't. Long-term growth policies, things that will improve productivity. Our performance there in Canada is still not at all what it should be. Taxes lower to encourage jobs in a lot of places. Those are not overnight things, so we're not there.
I have a really weird question to finish up with here. So here goes. I'll put it to the journalist first. Okay. You've all said here that politicians really can't have that great an impact over the overall performance of the economy, or certainly not nearly as much as they claim they can. If that's the case, why do they like to perpetuate the illusion that they do have this much impact on our daily lives?
Well, because if you poll Canadians or Americans on the most important issues in any election, the economy is always at the top. They know that, and it's, am I going to have a job? Is my paycheck going to keep rising? Those are the ultimate questions that every household has, and politicians know that, and so you're going to see Scheer arguing that things are a lot worse than they appear to be, and they'll be pointing out what did the Trudeau government do with all that deficit spending? Do we have like the big infrastructure projects that were promised? No, we don't really have all that. And vice versa. Trudeau is going to be arguing that the money was well spent, and Canadian, well, they'll be pointing at the jobs, they'll be pointing at wages and saying, look what we've done.
Do we in media and even academia, and certainly in politics, perpetuate this myth that they have a lot more control over the economic levers at hand than they do?
I think we do, and I think it's almost this human tendency that we actually want somebody to be in charge. We want somebody to be able to say, okay, you've got this handled, or somebody to blame. And yeah, I think if you look at whether or not a U.S. president is reelected, it is almost 100% due to job growth. It has nothing to do with their foreign policy, any policies you can put on a president. Like, okay, is the economy good? I'm going to reelect that guy. Look at George H.W. Bush back in '92. After Desert Storm, the most popular president in history, the economy starts to go south and he loses. So yeah, I think we do. And I think this is, again, this human tendency to be able to point to these events and say, okay, somebody's controlling this, somebody's in charge.
I guess you can't very well run for office on a platform of, there's really not very much I can do, so just do your best, everybody.
Yeah, we'll tweak things at the side, and what's going to happen is going to happen.
Good, okay. I told you it was a weird question. Okay, there we go. I want to thank everybody for being on the program tonight. Don Desjardins from RBC, Jason Kirby, the business journalist whose stuff you read in Maclean's, Globe Mail, and other places as well, Mike Moffat from the Ivey Business School, Linda Nazareth from the Macdonald Laurier Institute. Great to have all of you on TVO tonight. Thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.